is Esther Nwachukwu, and these are the top stories. Senate raises alarm on substandard petrol, diesel flooding Nigerian markets. IPOB raises alarm, declares some Igbo politicians sabotaging efforts to release Nnamdi Kanu. Obasanjo denounces speaking of Nnamdi Kanu with Southeast governors. Nnamdi Kanu appeals for conditional release. EFCC warns promoters of planned protest against it to desist. Details now. The world news at 6 begins with Kenyan authorities yesterday declaring some anti-finance bill protesters wanted as the protest runs into its third week. Kenyan police posted a photo of some of the protesters wanted, accusing them of unlawful activities during the protest. The police asked all declared wanted protesters to turn themselves into the nearest police station for further police action. In response to the police announcement, some Kenyans on X berated Kenyan police for ignoring its men, opening live bullets on protesters and goons hired to disrupt the protest. For weeks straight, Kenyan youth hit the streets, destroying commercial activities across the country in protest against the finance bill, which imposes a tax on some commodities. Last Wednesday, President William Ruto withdrew the bill after protests turned bloody as police opened live rounds on protesters. However, Mr. Ruto did not placate the angry demonstrators who have doubled down on the protest and are calling for his resignation. Hundreds of youth on Tuesday carrying coffins shut down Nairobi in the hashtag Ruto Must Go protest, defying police clampdown. Protests were also held in Mombasa, Kisii, Kisumu, Migori, Rongo, and other parts of the country. Kenya National Commission on Human Rights reported that 39 people have been killed as police clamped down on protesters between June 18 and July 1. The commission added that 361 persons were injured and 32 cases of enforced disappearances have been recorded since anti-finance bill protests broke out in the country on June 18. Meanwhile, the Senate today raised an alarm over the increase in substandard premium motor spirit, also known as petrol and diesel, in the Nigerian market. Senator Asukwa Ekpeyong observed that on June 16, 2024, a report revealed that 12 diesel cargoes conveying a total of 660 kilotons of diesel were exported by refineries to offshore Lome, Togo, for further distribution to West African markets, mainly Nigeria. He stated that the quality of the said diesel was below the Nigerian standard in terms of flash and sulfur levels. He further disclosed that even though the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority recently revised the standards of diesel importation into Nigeria in line with the Petroleum Industry Act 2021, it has been incapable of enforcing compliance with the standards. The lawmakers subsequently set up an ad hoc committee to launch an investigation into the continued importation of hazardous petroleum products and dumping of substandard diesel into Nigeria. Again, Ekpeyong averred that the NMDPRA has continued to issue import licenses to diesel, or rather for diesel and jet, despite sufficient local production capacity. As the lawmakers expressed anger over what they described as sabotage and a clear failure of the objectives of the PIA, the upper chamber asserted that those found culpable in the illicit act must face the wrath of the law. In another development, the indigenous people of Biafra today accused some Igbo politicians of frustrating efforts to release its leader, Nnamdi Kanu. IPOB warned that politicians trying to sabotage Kanu's release to quickly retrace their steps. This is coming after Southeast governors and senators resolved to meet President Bola Tinubu to explore a political solution regarding Kanu's trial and detention. IPOB spokesman Emma Powerful warned that Igbo politicians working against Kanu's release should be ready to face the consequences of their actions. A part of the statement reads, and I quote, "If they continue with their sabotage, their names will be made public soon. Also, some of the political jobbers in the Southeast region working against the unconditional release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu should know that they are following the activities closely." End quote. Meanwhile, former President Olusegun Obasanjo has disclosed that he did not discuss the issue of releasing the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, during his meeting with Southeast governors in Enugu State. You'll recall that Obasanjo, alongside Chief Emeka Anyaoku and His Royal Majesty Igwe Alfred Nnemeka Achebe, met with the Southeast governors. Now, following the meeting, there have been speculations that Obasanjo might have pitched his tent with those calling for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. However, in a statement today by his special assistant on media, Kainde Akinyemi, the former president disclosed that the meeting was held to discuss regional development issues and not the purported release of Nnamdi Kanu. He asserted that discussions concerning the release of the IPOB leader did not take place in his presence. Speaking further, he explained that the meeting also touched on issues such as security and infrastructure, economic and cooperative collaboration, which was meant to complement the national economic development agenda. In the same vein, former Abia State Deputy Governor today hinted that the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has agreed to abide by any conditional release to gain his freedom. The leader of the delegates numbering 15 from the Southeast region, Senator Eyinaya Baribe, told Newsben after a meeting with the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, that lasted for about 30 minutes, that he had already met with Kanu at the headquarters of the Department of State Services in Abuja on the issue. Senators from the Southeast at the meeting again pleaded passionately with President Bola Tinubu to release the detained Biafran Nation agitator. The appeal over Kanu's plight was made through the AGF for onward passage to the presidency. The former deputy governor of Abia State during the meeting expressed optimism that once Kanu is released, the tension and acrimonies engulfing Southeast region since he was clamped into DSS custody would become an event of the past. The lawmakers fear that unless Kanu is released, the social and economic activities in the zone will continue to be stagnant. Addressing judiciary correspondents immediately after the closed-door meeting, Abaribe, who spoke on behalf of his colleagues, lamented that the economy and social life in the Southeast had suffered enough due to the continued incarceration of the Biafran Nation agitator. Abaribe noted with grave concern that the peaceful demand of the detained IPOB leader had been hijacked by hoodlums and hardened criminals, leading to wanton killings of innocent people, including security operatives. Kanu, you would recall, was rearrested in Kenya in 2021 by the federal government and brought into the country for trial on terrorism charges. He has since pleaded not guilty to the charges before Justice Binta Nyako of the Federal High Court in Abuja. Also, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, in a recent development, issued a public warning regarding a planned protest against its operations. Now, there have been massive calls for a nationwide protest against the EFCC on social media following illegal raids carried out by its operatives. In a statement today, the anti-graft agency claims a Chowdhury group has been mobilizing young Nigerians, including students, through social media campaigns, encouraging them to protest against the EFCC. According to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, this movement is being promoted as a form of resistance on its enforcement activities, particularly to those targeting cyber crimes. The Commission expressed concerns about the involvement of individuals under investigation or prosecution, suggesting that these corrupt elements may be attempting to incite a national uprising that could threaten the country's peace and security. Now, he went ahead to disclose that while the EFCC acknowledged the right of citizens to protest, it emphasized that it will not tolerate any disruptions to law and order, especially around its office locations nationwide. The Commission has stated that it is collaborating with other security agencies to address any potential threats. The EFCC has also called on parents, guardians, and heads of tertiary institutions to prevent their wards from being exploited as tools in this campaign against the Commission. It stressed that its efforts to combat corruption and cybercrime are aimed at safeguarding the future of Nigeria's youth. Dele Oyewole, the EFCC's head of media and publicity, reiterated that the Commission remains committed to maintaining Nigeria's stability and security amidst these emerging challenges. You're currently listening to the World News at 6 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. We'll take a very short break. When we return, we'll head into a news analysis segment where, of course, I'll be joined with Barrister Eze Eluche. Barrister Eze Eluche will join me via the telephone to respond to some questions that we posted him on some stories read out on the World News at 6. Please do stay with us. Welcome back. This is still the World News at 6 on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. And of course, Barrister Eze Uluche has joined us via the telephone. Barrister Eze Uluche, good evening and thank you for coming on the World News at 6.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Barrister Eze Uluche, let me start off with the EFCC. That'll be the first that I'm going to start off with. Now, the EFCC has warned against promoters on social media who are trying to incite an uprising or a protest. According to the EFCC spokesperson, he said that this is a public warning regarding planned protests against its operations. And we know that on social media, there have been massive calls for a nationwide protest against what the EFCC and its operatives do whenever they raid some locations or some persons, and they consider it to be totally biased and quite aggressive. Now, let's recall the recent incidents. A lot of politicians, political elites, both within this administration and previous administrations, have looted heavily, sopped the country dry. In fact, if you hear the sums of money these individuals have looted, one would even wonder how come Nigeria is still surviving, how we're still retaining ourselves. This particular phrase was made by Olukoyode, the EFCC spokesperson. He says, if you see the case files on his table, that is high-profile case files on his table, the monies that these individuals allegedly have siphoned to several accounts across the continent is amazing, and that he wonders how Nigerians are still working, how we're still working together or actually surviving. Now, you do know that recently there was a raid on a particular hotel where 117 individuals were unmeritoriously arrested, paraded by the EFCC, and allegedly that they were onto cyber criminalities, they were onto cyber stalking and all whatnot. You also remember FUTA students too, where the EFCC raided their hostel and took some of these students away under the claims that they were into cyber crime and other Yahoo businesses, according to them. Also in Nasarawa too, we have seen so many raids taken on by the EFCC. Most times we don't hear of these matters being prosecuted. We don't know what the update is on these individuals. However, a lot of high profile cases are still on. We haven't heard any resolution, no topic about it, and they're still lounging where they're lounging. Would you say that the call by the EFCC that there should be no protest, wouldn't you consider it to be quite a little bit non-transparent, or there's no form of neutrality in their demand that they should desist from any planned protest?
Well, it is not in the position of the EFCC chairman to begin to warn Nigerians about anything.
Okay.
The young man should focus on his job, which is to tackle financial crimes and allow people to display their constitutionally enshrined rights to protest and to demonstrate.
Okay.
Rather, what we should be talking about is maybe that the demonstrations or the rallies should be peaceful.
No, he's saying that it should not even take place at all. Because according to him, if they come to their offices to protest, they've already called on enforcement agencies to ensure that doesn't happen. And that these people intend to create an uprising. That's what they're saying.
That is what I'm saying. It is not in his place to challenge the constitutional right of Nigerians to protest or demonstrate. And actually, it's because of what he has actually said. Mr. Olukorede should be held personally responsible for any fatalities or injuries that occur when Nigerians decide to protest against the wrongs that the EFCC has been perpetrating. And now, whether those protests, the planned protests, are real or should actually take place, the answer is very, very clear. The EFCC has shown bias against the youth, even in schools and in maybe youth from lesser wealthy backgrounds. They harass young boys who are driving fairly used vehicles. And then if the young person is driving a brand new car, or maybe the son or daughter of somebody in political office, there is no issue. So, I mean, the EFCC should be serious with themselves.
Barrister Eze Uluche, last week or 2 weeks ago, the EFCC raided a hotel, took over about 117 persons in that hotel, including a female. We saw CCTV footage of a female inside one of the hotel rooms, manhandled, beaten beaten by one of the EFCC officials while he entered. Now, whenever they raid all these places, they destroy things in the process that they got intel, or they've been following up with these individuals on some of their activities. Now, we don't know how that particular case is at the moment. Eventually, too, we heard the EFCC saying that they are going to sanction their operatives that manhandled the female in that particular hotel. We also know about the midnight raid on student hostels. One of them is in Futa. Another one, too, was in Nasarawa at the student lodge. Now, we've seen several activities of the EFCC operatives on some young persons, and we don't see this aggressive activity on their high-profile targets. Why is that?
Now, the reason is the EFCC, right from its onset, right from the days when Nnamdi Kanu was the head of the EFCC, all the way down to all the other characters who have chaired the EFCC. The EFCC has been a political an outfit for political witch hunting. They actually go after those who are perceived as opponents of the government in power.
Okay.
And then secondly, they also try to make some kind of noise on corruption to the pleasure of Western powers. Like when they say they are tackling 419, it's all to get some kind of accolades from the Western governments, from the US, from Britain. But we all know that in reality, this outfit has kept a blind eye on the humongous corruption being perpetrated by political office holders in Nigeria. When governors loot, when the former presidents, former national security advisors, former ministers, these characters loot horrendous sums, and the EFCC keeps quiet. When I say keeps quiet, even if they make some action, they do not parade these government officials like they parade the youth. Some youth will maybe they're involved in some kind of advanced fee fraud, and they are able to steal $1,000 or $2,000, and you are parading them, giving them a board to carry that they
Sir,
have.
can you recall the recent case of Sadia Umar Farouk? She was invited by the EFCC for questioning and she never attended, she never went, she never acknowledged. Instead, she said she was not feeling fine and nothing happened. No alarm was raised, there was nothing that was taken off afterwards. The EFCC officials waited for hours, she did not appear, and she did not even send any message at all to them that she was going to be indisposed. Compared to when they want to go pick up any average Nigerian, they consider to be into one crime or the other.
Yeah, well, we're saying the same thing. They get young people to carry placards that say arrested for so and so offense and blah blah blah. Why don't you also have political office holders, the governors, the ministers, also paraded with such placards stating the offenses or what they are charged for? Some of us have actually called for the scrapping of the EFCC, because if you look at the EFCC, the Nigerian police force can actually do exactly what the EFCC is doing, and they do it with much better finesse. So the EFCC is just a setup to harass political opponents of the government, and then to try to pretend as if Nigeria is actually tackling corruption for the international community. But in real terms, the EFCC, since its inception, from the days of Nuhu Ribadu to Madam Waziri to the Lamrude and other characters who have held sway at the EFCC, what we have always realized is that at each time, these chairpersons of the EFCC leave their offices as multi-billionaires. They sell off seized properties to their cronies. They make so much money, they make recoveries, and these recoveries are never accounted for. If you go to the EFCC offices, the car parks, you see the very lavish lifestyle, lavish vehicles that the EFCC or authorities who are supposed to be civil servants are driving. And then you will not blame the youth when these same EFCC characters try to storm schools or block highways that they are making arrests for fraud or corruption. When fraud and corruption is staring them directly in the face in Nasarawa and in the federal state capitals. And they don't do anything.
All right, Barrister Ezeluchi, let's look at the situation with Nnamdi Kanu. For now, we'll continue to have him in the news because there's a pursuit to see how a political resolution can be met for his release. Well, today, the former Abia State Deputy Governor hinted that Nnamdi Kanu has agreed to abide by any conditional release to gain his freedom. I want you to hear the phrase conditional release to gain his freedom. You know that the Southeast governors recently met, and one of the agenda was was to seek how they could speak with the president through the Attorney General of the Federation for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. One of the things is that if he is released, then the socio-political and economic landscape in the Southeast can actually be reverberated and can encourage investment. So if at all he is free, there will no longer be any insecurity issues in the Southeast. Well, the question now is this conditional release, what if one of them is being asked, what if one of the conditions that Nnamdi Kanu may have to agree to is maybe when he comes out or when he's released, he should stop agitating for Biafra, he should stop actually calling on his supporters to fight for the sovereignty of Biafra, maybe call his followers to order. What if these are part of the release? Because when you say conditions, there'll be some stipulated conditions which he needs to agree to. One of them may be, okay, go, leave, but be quiet. We don't want to hear you say anything else on social media. We don't want to hear you arouse anything. We don't want to hear you incite. What if that is part of the conditions that they lay on ground for him for his release, because he has agreed to a conditional release?
Now, let me answer that question in a very broad manner.
Okay.
The issue of the marginalization and the need for self-determination of people of the Southeast transcends Mr. Nnamdi Kanu or any other individual.
All right.
Prior to the advent of Nnamdi Kanu, there has always been the issue that the Southeast, the Igbos have been marginalized, and there will be need to correct and right wrongs.
Okay.
So that need exists and will continue to exist until it is properly and equitably addressed.
All right.
That's on its own. Now, with regards to the freedom of Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, if he decides to accept release under any conditions,
okay,
well, he's at liberty, because he is the one who's been in detention for so long.
Yes.
And so if he feels that all he wants is to be released, it's jolly well. But that is his own business. But let nobody be misled into thinking that the interest, the marginalization of the Southeast, the quest for self-determination of the people of the Southeast will cease with the release of or non-release of anybody. It is a continuum. As long as there is that intent being displayed by the government to continue to marginalize, to maltreat the people of the Southeast, the quest for self-determination must continue.
All right.
And it's not fixed or rooted to any individual.
So we're saying that it goes beyond Nnamdi Kanu. If he decides to accept whatever condition, another person can come up and continue for according to what you just said, for the freedom of the rights of the Southeasterners when it comes to how issues are handled in this country regarding that region. That's what you're saying.
Definitely. Yes, that is the reality.
But the quest feels like it's because of him. That's the way they've shrouded the entire situation. They've made it seem like because of him, because the plea from the Southeastern governors through the Attorney General of the Federation and to the president is that if he is released, then there'll be a quell in this agitation, because that's basically what they're putting out there. I need to read out what Abaribe said to judiciary correspondents today. Okay. Yes, he expressed that optimism that Kanu could be released. So if he is released, the tension and acrimonies engulfing the Southeast region since he was clamped into DSS custody would become an event of the past. Now, if, like how you describe this whole thing now, like you said, it transcends one person, it transcends Nnamdi Kanu. So if he agrees to the condition, because he's the one who has been incarcerated for years now, nobody knows what he has gone through, the suffering he has bared within the DSS custody. So if he's given that reprieve, that opportunity to be released, it doesn't mean that the quest or the agitation, like you said, for individualism or referendum will stop at any point in time.
Certainly, it does not mean so. And even on the issue of insecurity, when you look at the Southeast, what is making the place insecure? You see police and military checkpoints in fact, you've been in a position in one location and you see 5 or 10 police and military checkpoints within vicinity, within eyeshot.
When we are not at war.
This is what actually precipitates the violence. You see even suspicious releases from prison, like the one that occurred in the Owerri prison.
Yes.
When about 1,800 prisoners were released and not a single one was shot. And the government now tells us that was released by some group in a prison where you have the military, the police, the mobile police guarding the prisons, and all were released. And somebody tells us that the insecurity is related to any group, whether IPOB or whatever. No, my dear. The insecurity in the Southeast is orchestrated. Many of us believe it's orchestrated by the government. And so the release or non-release of Nnamdi Kanu will not really address the issue of insecurity. So if they want to release him, good, and very well for it. But the issue is, the fact is that the issue of marginalization and the self-acceleration of the people of the Southeast is paramount. And it's not, repeat, it is not dependent on the freedom or non-freedom of an individual.
All right.
It cannot be, because the quest even precedes the birth of Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, and will continue until it is properly actualized, until there is equity. You cannot talk of justice in the absence of equity, and that's what is going on in this country. So I hope that they release the young man, because he's being penalized unjustly. He should be released, that is a fact. But then the issues of the issues of marginalization of the Southeast, the issues that have led to the perpetual underdevelopment of the Southeast, when government make sure that there is no developmental projects in the Southeast, the railroads don't go through the Southeast, the power projects don't go through the Southeast, and no development goes through the Southeast. And they think it's all about one person being detained. No, it is not. Let us be factual to ourselves, and the government should be more serious on this issue. Yes, release Nnamdi Kanu, because they're just keeping the young man in detention for nothing, but do not make the mistake to trust this young individual who is being incarcerated.
All right, Barrister, thank you so much. I sincerely do appreciate your input. Thank you. We actually have a particular program coming up as soon as possible. So in order for us to wrap up the world news at 6, here again are the top stories. Senate raises alarm over substandard petrol, diesel flooding Nigerian markets. IPOP raises alarm, declares some Igbo politicians sabotaging efforts to release Nnamdi Kanu. Obasanjo denounces speaking of Nnamdi Kanu with Southeast governors. Nnamdi Kanu appeals for conditional release, and EFCC wants promoters of planned protests against it to desist. That's a wrap on the world news at 6. My name is Esther Wachuku. Good evening and thank you for listening.